has spent discussing certain topics between parents and children in a home as a taboo. Now, one such a topic is sexuality. It is very rare to find a Zambian home where parents talk freely to their children about these issues, and where teenagers or children in the home open up freely to their parents to hear about these issues. There's a certain stage that children reach in their lives where they're curious about these issues. Instead of going through the right channels, talking to their parents about these issues, they go to their peers who give them the wrong information about these issues. So today on the show, we're discussing this very imperative and interesting topic of teenage sexuality. Now, to help me discuss and propound this issue, I have with me a very dignified lady in the studio in the names of Auntie Mara. Auntie Mara, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
All right, I'm so excited to have you here.
It's my pleasure as well.
Thank you for honoring our invitation.
You're welcome.
All right, so before we delve into the topic, Auntie Mara, I'm sure the viewers are interested, the teenagers are interested. I'm curious as well, I want to know. Who's Auntie Mara?
Okay, so my full names are Mara Simakando Movita.
Okay.
I am married.
Oh, nice.
To a very wonderful man, Mr. Keshas Movita.
Okay.
I have 4 children.
4 children?
Yes, I've got 4 beautiful children.
You couldn't guess.
3 girls and 1 boy.
Okay.
Yes. Professionally, I'm a biomedical scientist. Currently, I'm working at the University of Zambia School of Medicine as a lecturer there.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, Auntie Mara, for telling us about you. Now, we delve into the topic. What is sexuality and who's a teenager?
Okay, so I'll start with the teenager first. Okay, so a teenager, or teen for short, as most of us like to use, is basically a person between the ages of 13 and 19.
Okay.
So teenagers are a subgroup of a bigger group of called adolescents, which spans from the ages of 10 to 21.
Okay.
Yeah. And sexuality is a very broad term.
Okay.
So sexuality encompasses a person's experiences and also expressions of sex. Okay, so it starts from the biology. Biologically, what is sex is whether a person is female or male. Okay, then we talk about physically.
Yes.
When talking about sexuality, physically is actually the act itself, sexual intercourse, whether someone participates in it or not. Okay, but it also has an emotional aspect. It's not just a physical aspect. Okay, so it involves emotions, which can be either good or bad, depending on how someone has been taught about sex from the beginning.
Yes.
Okay, and then we also have eroticism also found in sex. So these are things that are going to arouse someone either to be sexually active or not, or motivate someone to participate in sex or not.
All right.
Yeah. So we also have the behavioral aspect of sexuality as well. So how do people behave? So there are what are known as normal things to do in sex, and other things which are considered abnormal. Yeah.
Okay.
So the behaviors are also important.
All right.
Okay. And others, others are normal. Others are what I call. I don't know if you've heard of the term hypersexual.
I'm going to learn.
Okay. So some people participate in sex normally.
Okay.
Others are considered hypersexual. So it's like a condition.
Oh.
Yeah, and further from hypersexual is what we know as nymphomania.
Okay.
Those who actually can't help themselves.
But have sex all
They
the time.
have to have sex all the time.
To survive.
So they need to be treated for
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Alright.
So there are a lot of categories of sexuality.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So now today on the show, Auntie Mara, as you know,
Yes.
we're focusing on the teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
We've noticed to say in our country, in Zambia, there's a lot of cases where we hear of teenage pregnancies, teenagers aborting, teenagers killing themselves because they're depressed over this person that had sex with them and they walked away, one night stands, all these issues that we're seeing in the media and even in our communities where we come from.
Mm-hmm.
So today, Auntie Mara, I would like for you to talk to our teenagers about these issues. How does sexuality affect teenagers today?
Okay. So first and foremost, most of us actually, as you have alluded to, we think teenagers don't know much about sex.
Exactly.
But that is wrong. They know so much about sex. And
Sometimes even more than the people.
exactly, because unlike in our time, where most of the things were not broadcasted in the media, online and so on,
That's
this time everything is out there. It's just a matter of whether a person has got access to those things or not. Yeah, and our children are reading. Nowadays, children as early as the age of 5 or 6 are able to read.
Yes.
So if these things are there in the open, in the media, they'll be able to access those things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So first and foremost, sex is known by the teenagers, okay? And then also in our modern setting, sex has been casualized.
It's been normalized.
It's been normalized. It's not
handshake.
Exactly. So you find that most of the teenagers think partaking or participating in sex is not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's got a lot of consequences. Yes. So I think first and foremost we need to be aware that these things are there.
Yes.
They're there, and therefore as a church, as parents, we need to find time to talk about them. So that if we talk about them in the right setting, then our children learn to understand the healthy aspects of sex. Otherwise, what is being broadcasted out there may not all be good. Some of it is good, but most of the times, most of it is wrong. Exactly. So there's a lot of, I was actually reading something on some studies that showed that in other countries, they did a survey, I think it was in Canada, a survey of youths between the ages of 13 and 19 to find out how many were participating.
Sexually active.
Active, yes. They found that depending on the areas where they were going, the percentage was between 60% to 85% in some areas.
That is alarming.
Yes, these are teens who are actually engaging in sex, who've had some form of sex. Exactly. So we may not know what is happening to our children, but these things are real, and people are participating in sex. So we need to find an outlet or a way of talking to our kids about them.
About the right way to
Exactly.
All right, Auntie Mara. You know, there may be some teenager out there who has not yet joined us. So because of that one teenager, we're going to take a very, very short break. While at that, we're going to show you a few interviews that we did in the streets of Lusaka to hear just what the people of Lusaka have to say about this issue of teenage sexuality. We want to hear from the teenagers, want to hear from the parents as well, because we understand that the solutions are out there and the people of Zambia know about these things. We'll see you on the flip side.
Some of the things that make us as teens to enter into these sexual activities are that the things that we learn in school, that's exposure. The things that we learn in school, sometimes we want to experiment those things that we learn in school. And also the things that we watch on TV, what we see on the internet, in magazines, we want to experience and want to experiment that's what we saw. Most of the times our parents don't talk to us about these sexual issues, the advantages and disadvantages, when to start and when not to start, how to protect ourselves, because in the African culture we think parents think we're not supposed to talk about these things with our kids. So we don't know what is right and what is wrong. So at the end of the day we start doing the things that we're not supposed to do, because we don't have anyone guiding us and protecting us from what we're not supposed to do.
When we talk about sexuality, we're talking about the distinguishing of male and female, which is gender. But when we go deep into sexual activities, we as teenagers are taking things lightly. You know, in the olden days, our parents never had phones, never had internet, they never had TVs. So they were not exposed to that much of sexuality as we, the teenagers of nowadays, are being exposed to. In schools, we are learning. On TVs, we are seeing. On our phones, parents are not there to monitor us on what we see. And then the problem with us teenagers is that when we see things, we also want to experience. And then in the modern world, people are taking things lightly. Sex is just something that is being talked about like an everyday topic. If you're a virgin, then it's a problem. If you're a virgin and you're a teenager, it's even a bigger problem, causing peer pressure for other teenagers. I mean, sex is being talked about everywhere. being a teen is not something that is a taboo. But I mean, back then when you talk about sex, or maybe you talk about sexuality, when in the olden days, during our parents' times, it was a taboo for you to talk about that. So people are taking things lightly. We teenagers are taking things lightly. We need to look into these sexuality issues and see how we can resolve this issue and see how we can manage it as teenagers, so that we can grow up to be a different type of generation.
The consequences of being sexually active are that one can be very addicted, such that for a girl like me, I would end up being a prostitute because I'm addicted and I want to sleep around with everybody. And because of doing that, I might end up also getting these transmitted diseases, sexually transmitted diseases like HIV, STIs. The consequences mostly are on a girl's side because, if I'm trying to avoid getting pregnant, I'm going to get these contraceptives, I'm going to drink drugs so that I don't get pregnant. The consequences are actually too many, I might say, on a girl's side, on a teenager like me, because I'm a lady and I'm also going to lose respect from the society. I'm going to end up being a prostitute because I'm addicted to having sex around with everybody. So the long terms are that you might get sick, you might even end up dying because of these new diseases that are there because I'm addicted to being sexually active.
Welcome back, viewers. In case you're just joining us, I am your host, Natasha Shakolamamba, and this is Hope Teens. So today on the show, we're discussing a very, very imperative topic of teenage sexuality. And to help me do that, I am in the studio with my very, very dignified guest, Auntie Mara. All right, so to follow up from where we were at, Auntie Mara, we're talking about teenagers and sexuality in the modern world. Mm-hmm. So just to continue from there, I want to talk about the consequences. There's to every right, there's a responsibility, and to everything that somebody does, there's some outcome of some sort. Mm-hmm. So what would you tell the teenagers out there who are watching us today? What are the consequences of engaging in early sexuality?
Okay. So as I alluded to earlier on, I said that sex in itself is not just a physical act.
Okay.
It's got an emotional attachment to it, yes, which requires that someone who engages in it should have some level of maturity.
Okay.
Yes. So of course, in a Christian household, we know that sex is allowed in the marriage setup. Yes, the marriage setup. That's how we have been raised. Okay. Yes. So most of the time, you find that being raised like that, if you engage in sex at a young age, because of that background that you have, yes, the first thing that is going to hit you is the guilt.
Okay.
Yes. So if you do something that is wrong, you'll be guilty about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's not just in the Christian setup actually. Even in other religions or other settings, yeah, some people who've engaged in sex at an early age have been found to have some sort of depression after having sex. So it's like it's been wired in our mind. When you're not yet mature to participate in sex, it doesn't feel good to do it. Okay. So you're going to feel bad about it. Okay, that's one of the things. Guilt may not seem like a big deal, but sometimes guilt eats you up and can make you depressed and cause other things. Okay, and then apart from that, engaging in sex early is going to lead to pregnancy.
Okay, unwanted pregnancy.
Exactly, unwanted pregnancy, and teenage pregnancies now are rampant.
Yes.
Okay, in our setup we have kids as young as 9 years old, 8 years old, who I've seen at the investigating hospital.
Yes.
Come there, yeah, and get pregnant. No, some of them have babies at that age. Yeah. But then being a parent is a big deal. Okay. Because a lot of responsibilities come with being a parent. Apart from that, a lot of complications can result in pregnancy. Yes. Because you're not yet mature enough, your bone structure, especially for those who are below the ages of 16, right, your bone structure, you're not yet fully formed as a woman to be able to bring a baby out into this world. So that can actually result in complications, okay? And also may affect your future if you're in school. Not all pregnancies are going to be okay. Others are complicated. That means that your life comes to a halt and you have to postpone certain activities, okay? Then there's another issue, sexually transmitted infections. Okay? Most of the time, if people are engaging in sex and they're not safe, and most of the times, if kids are getting advice from their friends, they're not going to be safe. So they're going to engage in sex without protection. And that's going to lead them to getting some of these infections like gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis. And some of these infections are not readily or easily curable. I'll give you an example, for instance, syphilis. If it's not treated properly, it can actually hibernate in the body and stay for decades. And then you just get surprised, you're older, maybe you're 50, 60, and then symptoms resurface. And it may even, if you're not careful, it even enters your brain, it may cause neurological symptoms. Okay? And then apart from that, we have other conditions like HIV, which are not curable. That means your lifestyle automatically has what? Changed. Yes. You now have to take care of yourself. And if you're very young, maybe you are in your teens, as we said, you're not yet ready to take care of such conditions or accept such conditions. So it's just going to bring more toil in your life. Yes. And then thirdly, also, this, especially to the girls, okay? Having sex, especially below the ages of 16, makes you 2.5 times more likely to have cervical cancer.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Because even your genitalia is not yet mature enough to, because you know, sex is a sort of trauma to the body, especially when the body is not yet ready. That's why when children are abused, they get injured. Okay. So the body has to be ready for some of for that. So the micro traumas that can result, okay, from people having sex at such an age can cause that virus, which causes cervical cancer, human papillomavirus, to actually go through those small traumas, and in the long run, it can result, increase the risk of cervical cancer. Yeah. In fact, the risk of cervical cancer reduces drastically if the what is known as age at first sexual encounter.
Okay.
Yes. If the age at first sexual encounter is 21 years and above, the risk is greatly reduced.
Okay.
Yes. If you have sex before the age of 16, as I said earlier on, you have 2.5 times, the risks are higher. Even those between the ages of 17 to 20, their risk is higher than those who are above 21. Yeah. So you see, there's a way God made our bodies to allow for certain things to happen at a particular time. Yes. And so some of these things are, as a result, showing us that it's not the right time for you to do it if it's going to have such a risk. Exactly. And then also, some studies have shown that teens who engage in sex at a very early age are prone to become delinquent. You know delinquency?
Yes.
You've heard of juvenile delinquency?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are like teens who get involved in minor crimes like stealing, vandalism, and whatever. It's been shown that teens who actually have sex at a very young age, they have a high chance of being found in the delinquent category. Exactly. So I think it's because, you know, when you do something that is wrong and you get used to doing something wrong, some of those barriers for rights are eroded. Yes. So I mean, if you can do sex, what about stealing? you know what I mean? Are you seeing what I'm going at? So there's that also likelihood. Okay. And then of course, sex is pleasurable. So if something is pleasurable, you want to do it, isn't it? Because you want to experience that pleasure. It's possible that it can become an addiction.
Okay.
Yes, just like alcohol or smoking. Before you realize that you're addicted to having sex, yes. And so it becomes an issue which you cannot actually control. Okay. So that's why it's better to do it at an appropriate age when you're mature enough to go through it. And then there's another thing that I've noticed. Of course, it's not everyone who participates in sex willingly. Others are forced, like those who are abused sexually or raped, yes, they are forced to encounter it at an age when they did not want to do it. Yeah, so even for those, you know, it's a very traumatizing thing. But I think if they were aware about some of these things, talking about some of these things in our homes can prevent people from being abused. Because if someone is aware of the risks or things that can cause abuse, then they become alert.
Exactly.
Yes, and then they don't find themselves in a situation where they can be taken advantage of.
Okay.
Yes. So I think those are some of the things that I can come up with.
Okay, thank you so much, Auntie Mara. And you know, as I earlier said when we were opening the show, there are so many parents that don't talk about these issues with their children in their homes. So, Auntie Mara, for such one parent, what advice do you have to parents that have teenagers, youths, even younger children in their homes about this issue of sexuality?
Okay, so on that issue, actually it's been shown. You know, I was reading a lot about it just to make sure that I bring some facts instead of just logic.
Exactly.
Okay, so most teenagers who were participating in sex at a young age, when they were interviewed, they were saying that if their parents had talked to them about sex in their homes, they wouldn't have done it at the age that they did it. Yes, because most of them were actually influenced maybe by their friends. Because there's this thing, yes, you know, there's this thing especially in high school, where teenagers talk about things and those who engage in sex are seen as popular.
They make you feel as you're cool, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the uncool kid from
yes, so, you know, if you're a virgin, you know, people get surprised. Exactly. At this age, you know, I had sex earlier and so on. So you feel, left out, and so you participate in it. But if at home they teach you what is right and what is wrong, it can help. And also, I think the other thing that I've noticed in our culture, we are very vague when it comes to issues of sexuality. It starts from the kids themselves when they are young.
Yes.
Most of the times we shy away from hitting the nail on his head. Like for instance, Natasha, when you were young, what did you call your private parts? You had to find some name for them, isn't it? Exactly. Like pee-pee or doo-doo or something. Yeah, so it starts from there. From a young age, it's like we're not really being correct about it. When a child is young, they're 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They understand terms. They know what their ear is. Exactly. They know what their nose is. They also have to know that if they're a female, their private part is a vagina. Yes. If they're male, their private part is a penis. So if they know that at that age, it doesn't become something that is shameful to talk about. So I think the shame starts from how we raise our kids. So if they feel shame about issues of sexuality, if their private parts are not even called the right name, then they feel there's something that is, you know, there's something wrong. Exactly. So they're growing up with that negativity about it. And if they talk to their peers and their peers come out freely about it, they'll be given the wrong advice. So I think, let us be clear. Of course, we're not going to tell our children, no, you do this and do that. But let's not make it something that is shameful to talk about. Let the words be just said normally. If the children are at an age, and you know nowadays our kids are maturing early. Some of them even at the ages of 8, 9 years, 10 years, they're already hitting puberty. Exactly. So it means at that time their hormones are raging, okay? And they're becoming aroused. Yes. They're becoming aware of their sexuality. So they need to understand what it's all about. Yes. And the correct things about sex, so that they don't feel uncomfortable about it. Exactly. Because if sex is going to be filled with shame, then when they grow up again, they're going to be on another extreme. Exactly. They'll think it's wrong. There are some who even feel it's wrong in marriage to have sex, okay? But if they grow up with a positive attitude of it, but knowing that it can be done in a right environment and at the right time, then they're not going to engage in sex. So I think as parents, first and foremost, let's be friends to our children. Let our children feel free to tell us what is affecting them, whether it's sexual or not, so that we as parents then are able to give them the correct advice, so that they start from the home to learn what is good and what is right. So even if they go outside there, then they're going to know what is, you know, I'll give you an example. Okay. If a child is taught that children come from the market, are you saying that? Or we bought you from ShopRite. Or we got you, or you fell from heaven. Yeah. Are you saying that? They're growing up with that. And most of the times we tell this to our kids who are young, but we never correct it. As they grow, yes. So we start with that because we're feeling embarrassed to tell them. So we come up with such stories. Then what happens nowadays, by the time they're in grade 4, They're already learning what
about
sex
it,
is.
exactly.
Exactly. So now at home you taught them that they were bought where?
At
At
shoppers.
the market. They go to school, they tell them the actual correct thing that happens. Okay? So then they say, Mom and Dad
Tell me
lie.
this.
No, Mom and Dad don't say the truth.
Exactly.
They lie. So that means that what they're going to tell me is not
true.
correct. Okay? So if someone else tells them,
They'll believe that.
they'll believe that the person is saying the truth. Exactly. So if as parents we start at an early age, being honest, telling our children the right thing, telling them what is correct and what is wrong, then when they hear it outside and they see that what we're actually telling them is right, they're going to believe us more and they'll accept more from us parents what we tell them.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Auntie Mara. You know, I've been enlightened.
Oh,
I'm pretty
great.
sure the
I'm
teenagers
grateful.
and the parents as well out there have been enlightened today about this very important topic of sexuality. So now, as we come to the end of this segment, I'd just like you to highlight maybe any life skills you have for the teenagers or the parents, just anything that you'd like to say as we close.
Okay. So maybe as we close, as I already said to the parents, I think let's stop being a taboo.
Okay.
Let us talk about it. The more we talk about it, as Paul said, knowledge is power. Yeah. If we talk about something, then everything hidden about it comes to light.
Exactly.
Then it stops being something that is bad or wrong. If we talk about this more in our homes, we talk about this more at church, then our youth are going to grow up without having anything negative to put towards what sexuality is and what it's all about. Then they're going to grow better. So I think we need to have more awareness about issues of sex, both in our homes and even in our churches. As parents, let's take up that role to become proactive. Let us not wait for others to teach our children what is right. Because, you know, even though we are in a church or sometimes, you know, our parents would want maybe the aunt or the grandmother to come and talk to a child about something. You do not know exactly what is in the auntie's mind, or yes, or how the concept exactly. So I think let's be more proactive as parents to talk about these issues in our homes, give our children correct information, and then as teenagers, don't shy away from asking about these issues. Ask your parents, okay? Ask people from church who are mentors or yes, who you trust. Ask them, talk about these issues, because believe me, if we talk more about it, if people are sexually frustrated, if teens are having difficulties controlling their hormones or whatever it is, and they talk about it with their parents or things like that, we can find solutions and ways in which we can help so that people don't do these things at the wrong time. So I think we just need more awareness. We need to talk more about it and be more proactive as a church and as parents so that we don't leave this information out there in the wrong hands. And also another thing that I've noticed is that we are not very vigilant about the things that we allow our children to watch.
Exactly.
And also, yes, on the phones. And you know, nowadays we're giving our children phones at a very young age. Most of these phones are connected to the internet. We don't know what our kids are searching for. Exactly. So I think as parents, let's also take up a more active role in finding out what our kids are watching. A long time ago, we didn't see cartoons kissing. It was a taboo. Now, Mickey and Mickey Mouse and Minnie. They're already a couple. You see what I mean? Yeah. So we need to be sure that our children are watching correct things. Because sometimes the things that we watch are things that build our character. Exactly. So if our children are feeding on the wrong things, you know, you may be surprised that actually the people who stream a lot of porn and sexual apps are between the ages of 15 and 25. They're the biggest consumers of porn and all these sex apps. So you find that our kids are watching these things. But if as parents were more active, we put parental guidance on this, the DSTVs and the other things that we have. We restrict the age groups of the things that our children can watch. Then we're going to have a better control and also better results for our kids.
All right, thank you so much, Auntie Mara.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, I've learned so much, and I'm sure the viewers out there have also learned something. There you have it, viewers. This has been another exciting episode of this very wonderful show called Hope Teens. I hope to see you same time, same place next week. I have been your host, Natasha Shapalamamba. I will see you next week. God bless.